everybody, welcome back to Crystal in Harmony. It's Nicole. Today we're going to be discussing sessions 4 through 6 in which Ra gives our training program for how to become healers and more generally how to access the energy of intelligent infinity in a more dependable way. And before we get started, I do want to clarify that this information is not meant to invalidate any other healing methods or modalities. This is simply Ra's way of teaching people how to work with the healing energy. So before Ra gets too deep into the program, they break it down into 3 basic parts. The first aspect is mastery of the disciplines of the mind. The second aspect is mastering of the disciplines of the body. And the third aspect is spiritual. Once the mind and the body have been mastered, then we are ready to incorporate the spirit component and work with intelligent infinity. And at the end of session 4, Don asks Ra, can you please state the laws of healing? And Ra says, one of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of the mind, body, or spirit to a form congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. So Ra is saying that healing occurs when an individual realizes the perfection within themselves. When an individual realizes that perfection and aligns with it, intelligent infinity melds that person's reality of themselves with that perfection. The healer just initiates this process by being a channel for intelligent infinity. Then Ra says, one item which may be of interest is that of a healer asking to learn must take the distortion understood as responsibility for that ask/receiving, thus healing. This is an honor/duty which must be carefully considered in free will before the asking. I included this quote because it underlines the magnitude of the act of learning to become a healer. Ra is saying that in asking to learn and receiving that knowledge, the healer now has a responsibility to use the healing ability. It is an honor and a duty to become a healer, and Ra suggests carefully considering that fact before undertaking the responsibility of learning to heal. Session 5 begins with Ra getting into the first aspect of the training program, which is knowing the mind. However, the prerequisite for the mental work is the ability to silence the mind. Ra says the mind is a door and silence is the key. Now going back to the mental work, the first aspect of mental mastery is self-reflection. Ra says, to begin to master the concept of mental discipline, it is necessary to examine the self. The polarity of your dimension must be internalized. Where you find patience within your mind, you must consciously find the corresponding impatience and vice versa. Each thought that a being has in its turn an antithesis. The disciplines of the mind involve, first of all, identifying both those things of which you approve and those things of which you disapprove within yourself, and then balancing each and every positive and negative charge with its equal. The mind contains all things. Therefore, you must discover this completeness within yourself. This entire quote is beautifully summarized by Ra in these last couple sentences. The mind contains all things. You must discover this completeness within yourself. Every thought has a corresponding opposite. Ra uses the example of patience. Where you find patience, you must find the corresponding impatience. So the first aspect of the mental mastery involves accepting all thoughts that you have and then balancing them with their opposites. The second part of mental mastery is self-acceptance. Ra says, the second mental discipline is acceptance of the completeness within your consciousness. It is not for a being of polarity in the physical consciousness to pick and choose among attributes, thus building the roles that cause blockages and confusions in the already distorted mind complex. Each acceptance smooths part of the many distortions that the faculty you call judgment engenders. This one is pretty self-explanatory. Ra is saying that it's inappropriate for us to pick and choose amongst the attributes of ourselves that we like, while discarding or judging the attributes we don't like. We are whole, complete beings, and accepting the completeness within our consciousness means accepting all of ourselves wholly and completely. The third and fourth steps are repetitions of steps 1 and 2, but with the gaze turned outward. So step 3 is the same balancing exercise as step 1, but you apply it to the people that you encounter. When you view patience in another person, Ra asks that you mirror patience/impatience. When you view impatience in another, Ra asks that we mirror impatience/patience. Step 4 is the acceptance of other people wholly and completely. Don't just accept the traits that you like while judging the traits that you don't like. You need to accept people as the whole and complete person that they are. Now let's recap this first aspect of the training program, which is mastering of the disciplines of the mind. So first we had the prerequisite of being able to silence the mind, and then we need to balance and accept every thought that we have and the thoughts of others. And finally, we need to wholly and completely accept the attributes of ourselves and those of others. Now, the second portion of the training program involves mastering of the disciplines of the body. Ra says, it is necessary to know your body well. This is a matter of using the mind to examine how the feelings, the biases, what you would call the emotions, affect various portions of the body complex. It shall be necessary to both understand the bodily polarities and to accept them, repeating in a chemical/physical manifestation the work that you have done upon the mind, bethinking the consciousness. So we need to know our bodies well. We need to know how our thoughts and our emotions affect our bodies. For example, when you're sad, where in the body is that emotion felt? Do you hold sadness in your stomach, in your chest, or in your throat? Our thoughts and emotions have a physical effect on our bodies, and for this part of the training, it is necessary to know where in the body we hold our emotions. Then Ra says, the body is a creature of the mind's creation. It has its biases. The biological bias must be first completely understood and then the opposite bias allowed to find full expression and understanding. Again, the process of acceptance of the body as a balanced as well as polarized individual may then be accomplished. Now, I'm not too clear on what Ra means when referring to biological bias, but I think they could be talking about polarities or preferences within the body. For example, the polarities of healthy/ill, beauty/ugliness, strength or weaknesses, or maybe even preferred body shapes or body sizes. If you have an idea of what Ra might mean by biological biases, let me know in the comments. To add more context and understanding to this passage here, I'm going to use a quote from session 4 in which Ra says, the second part has to do with the disciplines of the body complexes. In the streamings reaching your planet at this time, these understandings and disciplines have to do with the balance between love and wisdom and the use of the body in its natural functions. Then in session 61, Ra says, the body complex has natural functions. Many of these have to do with the unmanifested self and are normally not subject to the need for balancing. There are natural functions which have to do with other self. Among these are touching, loving, the sexual life, and those times when the company of another is craved to combat the type of loneliness which is the natural function of the body, as opposed to those types of loneliness which are the mind/emotion complex or of the spirit. So biological biases may refer to the polarities that I mentioned before, and or the desires that our bodies have as they pertain to touching, loving, sexuality, and companionship. Now getting back to session 5, here's the last bit that Ra tells us about the body mastery component. It is then the task to extend this understanding to the bodies of the other selves whom you will meet. The simplest example of this is the understanding that each biological male is female, each biological female is male. This is a simple example. However, in almost every case wherein you are attempting the understanding of the body of self or other self, you will again find that the most subtle discernment is necessary in order to fully grasp the polarity complexes involved. So as with the mental mastery components, the last components of the body mastery involve extending the understandings of how the emotions affect the body and the biases of the body to other people. We need to fully grasp and accept the polarities of our bodies and the bodies of others. Once the mind and body have been mastered, we are ready to work with spirit. In session 6, Ra says, the third area is the spiritual complex, which embodies the fields of force and consciousness, which are the least distorted of your mind-body-spirit complex. The exploration and balancing of the spirit complex is indeed the longest and most subtle part of your learn/teaching. We have considered the mind as a tree. The mind controls the body. With the mind single-pointed, balanced, and aware, the body comfortable in whatever biases and distortions make it appropriately balanced for that instrument, the instrument is then ready to proceed with the great work. So our spirit complex is the least distorted aspect of ourselves, and the exploration and balancing of this aspect is the most tedious part of the whole program. But it's not the hardest because Ra says the mental aspect is the hardest. When the mind, which controls the body, is focused and balanced, then we, the instrument, are ready to proceed with the great work of channeling intelligent infinity. That is the work of wind and fire. The spiritual body energy field is a pathway or a channel. When body and mind are receptive and open, then the spirit can become a functioning shuttle or communicator from the entity's individual energy of will upwards, and from the streamings of the creative fire and wind downwards. So our spirit functions as a communicator between our individual will and the intent for the healing and the streamings of intelligent infinity coming from our crown chakra downward. Ra says that healing and other paranormal abilities result from an opening or a pathway from intelligent infinity. Some people have random holes in their energetic field which allow them to tap into intelligent infinity randomly and without control. But the whole point of going through this training program is to teach yourself how to access intelligent infinity in a reliable and dependable way. Ra also wants us to remember that the healing does not come from the healer, but through the healer. The healer does not heal. The healer is simply a channel for intelligent infinity. Alright, that's all for this video. If it was helpful to you, please subscribe to our channel and give us a like on the video. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at crystalharmony111. Take care, everybody. Love and light.